Welcome to the Servant Leaders Mindset Podcast, where we are changing lives through servant leaders. Up next.
And you're in ministry if you're being a blessing to people. If you are bagging groceries, you can be in ministry to the people whose groceries you're bagging. If you're a CEO, you can be in ministry to all the other people. My point is, we have an opportunity in every circumstance to be a servant leader, to provide value. And that's one of my really key ideas, is that providing value to people is the most important thing.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Lena Holmes, and this is the Servant Leaders Mindset. Today's topic is about upgrading productivity, relationships, and problem solving as a business leader. Therefore, I have invited my special guest, Mr. John Knowlton. John is a pastor and entrepreneur. During his recent career, he partnered with a wealth management company, and he was managing over $1 billion with a B in assets. And also, he was so successful that he was able to retire at the age of 51. After the COVID crisis, John went back to work, and he started another business helping CEOs and business owners as a C12 chair and business retreat host. Welcome to the show, John.
Lena, you make me sound so important and all that, but I'm just super happy to be here and share a couple things I've learned with you and the listeners.
Wonderful. It's great to have you. So first, I'd like you to tell our audience, because I had to look it up myself, what is a C12 chair? Can you explain what that is?
I'll do my best. C12 is a peer advisory group for Christian CEOs and business owners. So let's break that down. Peer advisory, meaning we do a monthly business retreat that lasts the whole day. So it's kind of like a small group session, but it's 7 hours long. And the real value isn't what I know, but it's what the group knows. And so we work together to build great businesses for a greater purpose. And so the institutional distinctive of C12 is this idea that the business owner doesn't necessarily have to see his or her business as a financial engine for other ministries. Rather, the business itself and the employees that come and the customers who do business and the vendors who sell to them are really the business owner's primary area of ministry. And so we talk about running the business as a ministry. And like all organizations, we have our own little internal language. And so we shorten business as a ministry to BAM. So running a BAM, a business as a ministry.
Oh, that's interesting. That is a fascinating way to look. It's a whole different perspective on ministry, I think, because a lot of people don't think of ministry as a business in any way, even no matter what kind of business they do. They don't see it as a ministry. They see it more as a business.
Well, that's right. And, I'm a pastor, been in church my whole life, love church, and I did a funeral on Saturday. I'm in it. But if you just think about the business model, a church, we gather people together. We might get them for an hour or two a week, and we ask them for money. In a business, we gather people together, we have them there 40 or 50 hours, and we pay them. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different model. And it's arguable that in the business run by a Christian leader who's got a servant leader mindset and is seeking to serve his or her employees, customers, vendors, the way Jesus would if he was in their shoes, that might be the place where there's bigger potential impact than preaching to people for an hour or two a week.
Absolutely. So you recently authored a book, and it's titled Thinking for Success, 52 Stories That Upgrade Your Thinking to Boost Productivity, Problem Solving, and Relationships. So what was the inspiration for the book?
Well, I never set out to write this book. Rather, it has come from the experience of leading people. And I noticed over the years that people would sometimes come back with the same issues or the same problems, or they keep hitting the same kind of mistakes. And so I would try to tell them what to do and found that wasn't as effective as I wanted. And so then I realized that when we tell stories, it opens up our brains a little bit differently. Like if I tell you, a rabbi and a priest walk into a bar, we want to know what happens, right? We open what's called a story loop. And so we've started this loop and we want to see how does it conclude. And so I started to use stories in my staff meetings, and I would tell a story and then kind of a moral of the story or a punchline to take away from it. And that was a more effective way of teaching people how to think differently so that they could bust through problems and reach higher levels of success in the things they were doing. And so after a little while, I don't know, a few years, I said, you know what? I'm going to start forgetting these stories. So I began to just write them down so that I would have them available for my use. And some years later, I realized, my gosh, I have 40 of these things. If I had 52, you'd have one a week for a year, that kind of thing. So I kept writing them and I got to maybe 70 or so. And then I hired an editing team to help me find the 52 best and then, make it presentable and fix all my mistakes. And Lena, I don't remember, have you written a book?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I don't know if you went through the editing process. I did, but I would open up the email and there's just this red sea of corrections, all the editor's notes are in red. And it was like, wow, I really had to, the first one I opened, I had to make a decision. Do I refute all of their corrections point by point? Or do I say, you know what? I hired these people and I'm just going to accept everything they say. So I mostly accepted. I think there was one thing I fought back on, but yeah, it's a humbling experience.
And it's like having a baby. I mean, I've never had a baby, but I can imagine. I mean, it really is. It's your baby, but at the same time, you have to be open to those corrections when they come back to you. And it's a humbling experience. When I wrote my book, I wrote it shortly after I finished my doctoral program, and I had written a dissertation and gone through the whole thing that you go and you have to go to the table and defend. Right? Exactly. Yeah. So when I did that, when the edits came back for the book, I was already used to people really critiquing my work, so it wasn't quite as painful. So what I like about the book is that you break this up into 52, which is really nice, these bite-sized pieces where people can really enjoy the book week by week and pick a model. And even pick, you set it up the way the book is designed, that it covers certain aspects or topics. And when you're going into that particular chapter, you're going into that particular discipline of leadership. So you discuss your whole concept of success. What is success? Because it means different things to different people. So can you define for our audience what you believe success actually is?
Well, I just want the audience to know, Lena really read the book.
I did.
I know you read it. So thank you so much.
I did.
Sometimes, people say they'll read it, but yeah, I can tell you read it. So let me start with what a lot of people think of as success. So maybe you think of success as having a certain dollar amount. When I was a young man, I thought when I can buy a 42-foot sailboat, I will be successful. And now I can if I wanted to, and I don't want the sailboat. So, that's sort of ephemeral. So there might be a material or a financial bogey or number or something that some people have. And they say, if I hit that, I'll be successful. Or, marry a certain type person, I'll be successful. These sort of trophies, if you will. Another way that some people think about success, and the dictionary sometimes defines it as the prosperous conclusion of events. In other words, that it ends. And I talk about this idea of an asymptote. So I know not everybody loved geometry in high school, but an asymptote is a curve that approaches a line or an axis and gets always closer, but never actually touches. And that's how I like to think about success. I believe, Lena, that each of us was created for a purpose. We have a reason for being here. And success is fulfilling that purpose more and more and more. I want to be a great husband. And I'm not going to wake up one day and say, you know what? That's it. I've hit peak husbandhood and I'm going to stop trying now. So it'll never end. I will always find a way to get better at being a husband. Well, one would hope that's certainly my goal.
Yeah.
And so each of us has a purpose. And as we discover that, and that's usually an ongoing, unfolding discernment process as we find things we're good at or have passions around, and as in our prayer life and in our feedback that we receive from people around us who love us, we discover our purpose. And success is leaning more and more fully into what we were created for.
I like that. I like that definition of success because we never arrive, and it leads you to that mindset of continuous improvement that we never really arrive, that we're just making or becoming a better version of ourselves in every way, in every aspect of our lives, not just as a business owner or as a husband or a wife or a father or mother, etc.
There's an old blues singer named John Lee Hooker, and I heard an interview with him, and he said, "A blues man never satisfied." And I was like, the first time I heard it, I'm like, what? You can't be satisfied. But what he was saying was he's always a professional, a real musician is always finding ways to improve. Mm-hmm. And so I like the way he said that, real short. I can use a lot of words. He made it nice and tight.
So in your book, you also talk about relationships. And so over your career, what are some of the most important aspects of relationships that you've learned in terms of building them and then maintaining them?
Well, I'll tell you, any vision you can accomplish by yourself is really, really small. And so accomplishing anything of significance requires other people. It demands that we get along. Building a family obviously requires other people. Building a business, you have to have customers. You probably have to have coworkers. You probably have to have vendors. Those are all people. So anything you can think of. You want to be a great teacher, you're going to have students, and they're people, and they have parents who are people, right? So this is an essential skill. And some of the best politicians, just as a quick example, are maybe their policies aren't great, but they're masters or masterful at relationships. People describe Bill Clinton as someone who, when he was talking to you, like the world disappeared and he was just completely absorbed in what you had to say, and you thought you were the only person in the world, Now, I'm not a super big fan of Bill Clinton, but the point is he got elected president twice, and that was one of his qualities. Really great interpersonal skills. So
sure. And great leaders too. As you point out in your book, you talk a lot about communication too. Communication is how you communicate determines how well you're able to build a relationship and maintain it. Of course, in addition to creating or building that relationship, in order to maintain it, you have to continue to build that through communication. Those touch points, in other words, are important. Yeah. And you talk a lot about that in your book when you talk about your family and how I was impressed by the fact that you all continue. I know it's old school. I know it's traditional thinking, but you sit at the dinner table and you make sure that you have that time to communicate. The thing about communication is how you communicate. In this age of technology, emojis just won't do it. We're all constantly texting each other and writing, and I do that too. I mean, I'm not, putting down technology, but at the same time, there's just nothing like that interpersonal, taking the time to talk to someone. And really, when you ask, how are you doing, that you're really concerned and you're really interested in how they're doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing up that chapter of the book or that model. And when somebody gets home, sometimes they'll ask, what's for dinner? But my point in that piece is the real question is, what's dinner for? And dinner is for communication and transferring values. And so Julie and I, my wife and I, have two questions that we ask each other every day. And we've been doing this for a quarter of a century. And it's, how was your day? And so I think it was Aristotle said there's three levels of communication. There's logos, ethos, and pathos, right? Logos is just the words, and that's what you get in a text. And then there's the ethos, which is sort of the ethics of the person, and then the pathos, it's their emotions and all that. And so when I ask, how was your day? I'm interested in the information that comes in the words. Oh, it was okay. I had this meeting and that meeting. I'm really far more interested in the emotional content of it, though. Mm-hmm. How was Julie's, whatever happened during the day, how has it affected her emotional condition? And this isn't just a woman. She does the same with me. So I don't want don't want anybody to mistake that this is a sexist thing. We are all emotional. God made us with emotions. We all feel things. And so we need to be attuned to the emotional condition of the people around us. And so I'm asking for some information about the content of her day, but more importantly, how's she feeling now? And then she would ask me, how was your day? But the way that she answered and the emotional information that was conveyed in the first question lets me know how big of an ask can I make. That was ask with a K. Ask, how big of an ask can I make? In the second question, which is, what do you need tonight? And so if my sense is that, boy, it's been a tough day for Julie, I'm not going to ask for anything. I'm going to say, how about I do the dishes? Or how about I give the kid a bath? Or, something like that. But if the answer to the first question, how was your day, was emotionally neutral or positive or something like that, hey, maybe the ask is a little different. When she asks me, what do I need? Maybe I'll ask for some time together, or maybe I'll ask for, let's go for a walk or whatever. The point is that communication that's happening at the dinner table, it's not about just nutrition. It's really about relationship building. How can I pour into the other person? How can I meet his or her needs? What is it that would bless them and be upbuilding to them? And when you make those kind of deposits every day, now you're building a life together. It's not transactional. I'm not trying to get something out of her. She's not trying to get something out of me. She's not trying to get me to do something. We become the type of people who naturally want to be a blessing to the other person. And that is solid, man. That can withstand all kinds of storms, financial crisis, relational stuff in your family, health issues. You've built an incredible foundation if you're able to do that. And it's one tiny little conversation at a time. I'm going to transition to another topic, so feel free to bring me back. But one thing that I observe is that people don't have little conversations, and then stuff is building up, and then they have to have a big, scary conversation.
Absolutely.
And those are big and scary.
Well, that's really important. And that whole mindset transitions, or it transfers over into the workplace, about how you get to know your employees. When you meet them or greet them, whether it's daily or weekly or how often you see your employees, it's really important to get to know them emotionally. Yeah. Because you cannot be an effective leader or supervise them, because every person has a different need, and they're all at different stages and phases in their lives. And especially in the workplace, there are cultural differences, there are age differences, there are generational differences, male, female differences. And so it's really important. And I like the fact that, the whole thing about servant leadership is, how are you doing first? Not about how the employee is looking at your facial features or how they're reading your body language as to what kind of day you're having, but it's more about putting the employee first.
Yeah. And you can do that same type of interaction that I just described that we do at the dinner table. You can do that at the office. In fact, I coach people all the time that when you walk in, I'm assuming that you're co-located in an office building here, but to stop at everybody's door or make a point of saying good morning. I heard you were going to the baseball game last night. How'd that go? Those kinds of things. And so you want the logos information, the basic facts, but what we're really listening for, we're meta listening from above. We're listening for the emotional content. And maybe Susie needs a little encouragement today, or Bob seems to be worried about something. I'm going to try to have lunch with him today. Or Jane is really flying high. Maybe she can handle a little more workload today, those kinds of things. And so both as someone who cares about others and as a leader or manager who's trying to get the work done, all of that stuff is super important. And we make a big mistake if we treat everybody the same and assume that they're bricks in a wall. That's not how it is. There's stones in a fieldstone wall or a beautiful fieldstone house. They all are shaped a little bit differently, and you've got to find the right way to fit the things together. We're not interchangeable.
Absolutely. So you being the bivocational pastor, what advice would you have for those who are like you. They're interested in ministry, but they also want to start a business. And they're at that point where they feel like, I know I'm called to this, but I'm also called as an entrepreneur. What are some of the first steps they should take in order to, if they decide to start a business, or they think that it might be taken away from their ministry, what they're doing, how would you advise them to begin that process?
Sure. Well, this concept of I'm in full-time ministry has sort of gotten under my skin a little bit. You know what? Do we really need another not awesome preacher out there? Maybe we do. I don't know. But the internet, we can have access to Jake's, Craig Groeschel, name your flavor, the best in the world at whatever their style is, right? And so, do what your hand finds to do, and you're in ministry if you're being a blessing to people. If you are bagging groceries, you can be in ministry to the people whose groceries you're bagging. If you're a CEO, you can be in ministry to all the other people. My point is, we have an opportunity in every circumstance to be a servant leader, to provide value. And that's one of my really key ideas, is that providing value to people is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. That starts what I call the value creation cycle. Jesus said in Luke 6:38, give and it shall be given to you. So, right, the value creation cycle, if I want to receive, that starts with a gift. And so you're in ministry anytime you're doing something that's a blessing to people. And so, now, you know what? We're not all gifted at apologetics or homiletics or preaching or praying for the sick or comforting the dying, but we all have something we're good at. You asked about success. My belief is everybody was created for some purpose. Mm-hmm. Find that, and you will be in the sweet spot of ministry. So I just would encourage, my short answer, encourage you, do what is in front of you, find a way to bless people, and you will be in ministry.
Excellent. So you talk a lot about problem solving also in your book. And I really like what you said about the types of problems we confront in life. All of us confront them. It's funny, you almost, how they used to say, you're preaching my sermon. But it's like the first question I always ask myself when I become anxious about something. And you talk about the 3 buckets that problems fall in. Can you elaborate about that a little bit more?
Buckets 1, 2, and 3, and I didn't invent this idea. The first place I can find it is in a book by Hiram Smith, but then Stephen Covey picked it up later as well in the 7 Habits. But what do we control? What do we influence? And what's just completely out of our control? And so those are buckets 1, 2, and 3. Bucket 1, what do I control? Bucket 2, have influence over it. And bucket 3, no control, no influence. And the reality is almost everything is in bucket 3. And there's this reality that the broader our concern, in other words, the more that we worry about bucket 3, things we can't have any influence or control over, the more we are concerned about that, the more anxious and dissatisfied we're going to be. And so whenever there's something that happens or some piece of news or information that comes our way, I really think it's helpful, super helpful to think about, is this something that I can control? So here we're recording in late June. Israel and Iran have been at war with each other. The United States recently got involved and dropped these big bombs. Wow, I might be really concerned about that. Do I control the U.S.'s foreign policy? No, I don't. Can I influence it? Boy, that's a pretty big stretch. I'm not in the Senate. I'm not on the foreign, I'm not on any committees in the Senate. President Trump doesn't take my phone calls. It's like, I really don't influence that either. That's in bucket 3. So if it's really concerning to me, I can pray about it. The Bible tells us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, so I do. But the rest of it, like whether we're going to drop a bomb or we're going to send troops, that's not in my control. Then the next question, what is in my control? What's my next best step? Well, I can turn off the news. That's in my control. I don't have to listen to it. Well, that's an interesting idea. I can spend more time with my adopted kids. That's in my control and make a difference in their lives. I probably can't do much about Tehran or Jerusalem, but I can do something with this kid who lives in my house. How about I go talk to my teenager? How about I go see if I can help my wife with something? See what I'm saying is, if we can spend most of our energy and put our concern in bucket one, we will be far more effective than if we're trying to influence stuff we can't influence and control people we can't control. I just heard Dallas Willard had mentioned this woman who she would turn the world over to God every night before she went to sleep because he was going to be up anyways. But then when she woke up,
cute.
she'd take it back, you know.
That's cute, but that's really a lot of us do that, and
We sure
we
do.
we get all anxious and we don't even know why, and we're going on. And the first question I always ask myself: do I have any control over that? If I don't, then I'm very quick to just drop it, let it go.
That is a
Because it
sign
will
of
say-
health, Lena. That will lead you
Yeah.
to be a healthy person.
Yeah.
If we fixate on all these things that we can't control and don't have any influence over, anxiety, there's all kinds of this cascade of bad outcomes that follow that.
Absolutely. And that's a good segue into what you were talking about when you were talking about focus, how important focus is to productivity.
Yeah.
And so if you are listening to all the noise, you cannot, and we are very distracted. Our phones distract us. Everything distracts us.
These are distraction machines. They are scientifically designed and tested to distract us, to break our focus.
Absolutely. And so you talk about that, and you even quote a statistic about being distracted while driving, the number of people who get into accidents because they're so distracted. So we have all these distractions. Talk about focus, for the importance of focus to being productive. If someone wants to be successful in business, they must be focused. That's like a number one habit. Do you have a specific habit that you do that allows you to, or facilitates you being focused?
Let me go through 3 quick tips. First is start the day in a peaceful state. So many people, I've asked people about this, and when they're honest with me, I'll say, what do you do first thing when you wake up? And almost everybody grabs their phone and looks at stuff, looks at notifications or looks at the news.
I don't, but yeah.
In the bathroom. I mean, before they're, brush their teeth or whatever. So I would say, first tip, start the day in a peaceful state. For me, that's I read scripture and I shut up and listen and try to listen to what God has to say to me. I'll go through my meetings for the day. So 7 hours ago, I prayed about this very conversation. God, what would you have me to say? How can I be a blessing to Lena and the people that listen? And just go through your day like that and not worried about it, but seeking wisdom and being in a peaceful place. I try to do that for at least an hour every day. So that's number one, is start the day right in a place of peacefulness. Because if you start with anxiety, it's not going to probably get better. It's like leaky plumbing. It doesn't fix itself.
Absolutely.
The second is to turn off all notifications on your phone.
Which I've done.
We don't need to know every time the baseball team strikes a pitcher out or strikes a batter out, right? I mean, you don't need to, that is not an urgent matter. And the reality is none of the other stuff is an urgent matter either. Like if my job is to, I don't know, let's say we're running a staff meeting. That's our job, is to run that staff meeting. Not to worry about what's going on in foreign policy or, with a celebrity or, who's chasing which celebrity's girlfriend. All that stuff is all a mess. What's my job? My job is to do this thing right now. No notifications. The third thing is it's maybe a little harder to swallow. I don't know, maybe turning off notifications would be hard for people to swallow. But I like to put myself into situations that require 100% focus or else they lead to death or injury. So it's Thursday, Monday, and Tuesday of this week, I was climbing 120-foot cliffs.
Yeah, I read about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I try mountain biking in the woods. The trees do not care if you're coming or not. They will stand there and let you smack right into them. So what happens when you do that kind of intensity is you train your brain that it can stay focused for longer than 10 seconds or 30 seconds, whatever your current level of focus is, you can train your brain to focus for longer. And one of the best ways is it's like a parallel training. So it's not necessarily I'm gonna grind it out and I'm gonna muscle and force myself at work to stay focused on work. Do other things that are a little more fun or engage your body. We're embodied beings, right? And so we have these bodies. Use it. Do stuff that requires 100% focus to keep your body safe, and it trains your brain. You can stay on task.
Absolutely. And also the importance of being able to prioritize what is important, what is less important, and then what's not important at all. And I find that with younger employees, that's part of the experience that you gain as you get into higher levels of management, and that is understanding what you ought to prioritize and how you ought to prioritize it. So a lot of times you might ask somebody, many times when I was managing people, I was like, well, what are you working on now? And they'll be working on something, in the scheme of things, you really shouldn't be spending your time there. You should be spending it over here, or make this the priority. So I'm guiding employees and teams. A lot of times it is up to leadership to really also help to guide them to prioritize. That's your job, and a lot of times I think and that's just basically due to lack of experience. It's not that the person doesn't know how to do that. It really is that's why they made you the leader, right? So I think it's important to understand that as well. But I like all the things you said about just in preparation. And that takes also not just jumping out of the bed and the whole thing, jumping into your clothes or whatever, take your shower, jump into your clothes, and you're in the car. I hear this with people. And of course, at one point in my life, long time ago, I was, you're praying on your way to work and this is your quiet time.
Right.
No, it's not. Yeah, that goes back to the whole idea of focus as well. I just want to end this, this interview by just asking you to, if someone is interested in learning more about you and your business and what you do, because I think it's really important. How often do you have those retreats, and where are you located? If someone really wanted to be involved with it and they already started a business.
Sure thing. Well, for everyone, whether you're a business owner or whatever, I'm happy to give you a free tool. And it's an example of one of the stories with the moral of the story. And you can just go to our website, abundantthoughtrevolution.com. And there will be a pop-up first thing that'll say, hey, do you want a free chapter? Just give us your email and we'll automatically send you a tool that you can use in your very next meeting, team meeting or staff meeting or what have you. And then there's a 90-second video or so. It's about 90 seconds of me explaining how to use it. So I want to equip you right away. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is you could buy the book. That would gratify me greatly. It's Thinking for Success, and it's available anywhere you buy books. Barnes & Noble is a great partner of ours. So Barnes & Noble would be my number one preference right now because it's not at the local retail stores quite yet. And then finally, the C12 is the work that I do coaching CEOs. And there are C12 chapters all over the United States and in several other countries as well. South Africa recently opened up.
Oh, wow.
We're in Malaysia, Singapore, Brazil is really big. And so you could go to joinc12.com and find a forum near you and contact the local chair. I happen to be in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Not everyone is in Kalamazoo. I know you're not all here. And so if you live in Kansas City or somewhere else, then you could find a local C12 chair at Join C12.
Wow. And is this like a mastermind? Do they operate like masterminds, these gatherings across the world?
Well, so C12 is actually a franchise, and it's headquartered in San Antonio. And so C12 provides content for the morning. So if you want to think about that retreat day that's about 7 hours long, we start in the morning with what we call our balance wheel. That's where we self-report on all of the things in our life that are important that are not the business. So my family, relationship with God, personal finances, health, fitness, nutrition, retreat, rest, fun, etc. And then we go through some content that comes from C12. And so there's elements on building a great business, all the way from organizational structure and recruiting and hiring, retaining, compensating employees, to balance sheet issues, sales and marketing, finance, all those kinds of things. And then we always have a segment about business as a ministry. How can we run our organizations the way Jesus would if he was in our place? And then in the afternoon, we have an opportunity for each person once a year to go into a deep dive presentation on his or her organization, and then present a key question or two and get the feedback from the group. And then at the end of the day, we have open forum where anyone may bring any item for advice and counsel. So that's the general structure of each day.
Wow, that sounds really good. Sounds really productive. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be a guest on the show. It was just such a pleasure to have you, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing.
Well, Lena, you're a wonderful interviewer, and you really read the books, and that's awesome. And so I'm so glad to have been here. I really hope it added value to you and your listeners.
Thank you.